the art of Stoicism without stuffing your feelings. So, you're intrigued by Stoicism. You've heard whispers of inner peace, unshakable resilience, and a life free from the tyranny of emotions. But a nagging question lingers. Does being Stoic mean becoming an emotionless automaton, a stone-faced stone, a human Spock devoid of feeling? Absolutely not. That's a common and seriously misguided misconception. Let's dive into what both ancient and modern Stoics have to say about navigating the emotional landscape without turning into a block of granite. Ancient wisdom, impressions, assent, and the art of judgment. Picture this, dear viewer. You're walking down the street, and a sudden, unexpected downpour soaks you to the bone. Your initial reaction? Probably a mix of annoyance, frustration, and maybe even a touch of "why me?" This, my friends, is what the ancient Stoics called an impression, which is an involuntary, automatic response to an external event. It's the raw, unfiltered data your senses feed your brain. Now, here's the crucial part. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, emphasized the difference between this initial impression and our assent to it. We can't control the rain, and we can't completely prevent the initial feeling of annoyance. But we can control whether we let that annoyance fester, ruin our day, and dictate our actions, or cause some other kind of nuclear reaction. That's the power of assent. Why don't you think of it like this? An impression is like a knock at the door. You hear it, but you don't have to open it. Assent is your decision to swing the door wide open and invite that emotion in for a friendly chat. The ancient Stoics believed that emotions, in the way we usually experience them, arise from our judgments about external events. That downpour isn't inherently bad. It's just weather. We judge it as bad because we think it's inconvenient, ruins our hair, wets our superhero cape, or disrupts our plans. It's our interpretation of the event that creates the emotional turmoil. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, put it eloquently in his Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This isn't about denying the existence of feelings, it's about understanding their origin and taking control of your responses. Virtue, the North Star of Stoic living. For the ancient Stoics, virtue was the sole good. Everything else, including wealth, health, reputation, even our own bodies, was considered indifferent. This doesn't mean they didn't care about these things, but they recognized that their value was external and beyond their complete control. Emotions, in themselves, were also considered indifferent. They weren't inherently good or bad. What mattered was how we used them. Suppressing emotions wasn't virtuous because it hindered our ability to reason clearly and act appropriately. Imagine a judge trying to deliver a fair verdict while suppressing intense anger or grief. Their judgment would be clouded, and their actions might be unjust. And years down the line, this repressed rage may reveal itself in the knockout game or cancer. The goal wasn't to eliminate emotions, but to experience them in a way that didn't compromise our reason and virtue. This meant acknowledging the initial impression, examining the underlying judgment, and choosing a response aligned with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, which are the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism. Modern Stoicism, emotional regulation, and the power of acceptance. Fast forward, dear viewer, to the 21st century, using a psychedelic wormhole if you must, and know that Stoicism is experiencing a resurgence. Modern Stoics build upon the wisdom of the ancients, often incorporating insights from modern psychology. This brings a fresh perspective to the question of emotions. Modern Stoics often frame Stoicism as a form of emotional regulation. It's not about stuffing feelings down, it's about developing skills to manage them effectively. Think of it like learning to surf. You don't try to stop the waves, but you learn to ride them with skill and balance. This involves various techniques: cognitive reframing, challenging and changing negative thought patterns that contribute to unwanted emotions. For example, instead of thinking, "My boss is ruining my day," you might think, "My boss is responsible for my paychecks, and I like my paychecks." Mindfulness. Paying attention to the present moment without judgment. This allows you to observe your emotions as they arise without getting swept away by them. Focusing on what you can control. This is a core Stoic principle. You can't control the weather or your boss, but you can control your response to it. You can choose to put on a raincoat, find shelter, hide in the office restroom, or simply accept the situation and make the best of it. Modern Stoics also emphasize the acceptance of emotions. They recognize that emotions are a natural and unavoidable part of the human experience. Trying to completely eliminate them is not only impossible, but also potentially harmful. Suppressing emotions can lead to stress, anxiety, and other mental health issues that require more than a fidget spinner to deal with. What are some modern examples of using Stoicism to deal with life? Stoicism, with its emphasis on reason, virtue, and acceptance of what we can't control, offers a practical toolkit for navigating the challenges of modern life. Here are some contemporary examples of how people apply Stoic principles, dealing with workplace stress and uncertainty, focusing on effort, not outcome. Imagine you're working on a crucial project with a tight deadline. Instead of obsessing over whether it will be a success, which is influenced by many factors beyond your control, a Stoic approach would be to focus on putting in your best effort, meeting deadlines, and maintaining a positive attitude. This way, you find satisfaction in the process itself, regardless of the ultimate outcome. Managing difficult colleagues. You have a coworker who is constantly criticizing your work. Instead of getting angry or defensive, a Stoic would try to understand the situation, perhaps even consider if there's any valid feedback. They would focus on maintaining their own composure and professionalism, recognizing that they can't control the other person's behavior, but can control their response, and delete that revenge email. 2. Navigating relationships and social interactions. Accepting others as they are. A friend cancels plans at the last minute. Instead of taking it personally or getting upset, a Stoic would accept that people have their own reasons and priorities. They would practice empathy and understanding, recognizing that they can't control other people's actions. Dealing with criticism. You receive negative feedback on social media. Instead of getting defensive or engaging in arguments, a Stoic would consider the feedback objectively. If it's constructive, they would learn from it. If it's simply malicious, they would dismiss it as irrelevant, perhaps muttering "troll," and focus on their own values and principles. 3. Facing personal challenges and adversity. Dealing with illness or injury. You experience a health setback. Instead of dwelling on the negative aspects and feeling sorry for yourself, a Stoic would focus on what they can control, following medical advice, maintaining a positive mindset, and focusing on recovery. They would accept the situation and find ways to adapt and make the best of it. Coping with loss or grief. You experience the loss of a loved one. While grief is a natural and necessary emotional constellation, a Stoic would focus on accepting the loss as an inevitable part of life. They would cherish the memories of their loved one and find ways to honor them in the present, while also focusing on living a meaningful life in the here and now. 4. Examples in modern culture. Viktor Frankl, a German Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, demonstrated how Stoic principles can help people find meaning and resilience even in the face of extreme suffering. Admiral James Stockdale, a prisoner of war in Vietnam, who used Stoicism to endure years of torture and maintain his leadership and integrity. How to face toxic people with Stoicism. Practical strategies. Grey rock method. This involves becoming as unresponsive and uninteresting as a grey rock. You provide minimal engagement, avoid emotional reactions, and keep conversations brief and factual. This can be effective in dealing with manipulative or attention-seeking individuals. Set clear boundaries. Communicate your limits clearly and assertively. Let the toxic person know what behavior you will not tolerate and what the consequences will be if they cross those boundaries. Limit contact. If possible, minimize your interactions with the toxic person. This might involve reducing the time you spend with them, avoiding certain situations, or even cutting off contact altogether. Seek support. Talk to trusted friends, family members, or a therapist about your experiences. This can provide emotional support and help you develop coping strategies. Remember, their behavior is about them and not about you. The takeaway: Stoicism and calmness. So, dear viewer, Stoicism isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about developing the wisdom and self-control to navigate the emotional landscape with grace and resilience. It's about understanding that while we can't always control what we feel, we can always control how we respond. Stoicism is about living a life guided by reason and virtue, even in the face of strong emotions. So, embrace your feelings, examine your judgments, calm your mind, and remember that you have the power to choose how you respond. That's the true power of Stoicism.